Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, and thanks for joining us for today's webinar. 5 ways Gantt charts help you manage projects like a pro, even if you're not a project manager. So I'm Kim Wolf, Director of Marketing here at Redbooth, and in today's webinar, I'm going to discuss how Gantt charts can help ensure that your projects are a success. So we'll talk about the key ways Gantt charts can help you visualize your project schedule, identify any blockers before they become a problem, and help you deal with unexpected changes. And we'll also cover how to avoid common pitfalls that can derail your project management goals. So this webinar will run about 30 minutes and we'll leave time at the end for your questions. And if you have questions at any time, feel free to type them into the GoToWebinar panel, and my colleague Diana is moderating. So we'll answer those during the Q&A session at the end. And again, this session is being recorded, so don't worry, if you missed something or if you want to share this with your colleagues later, you'll receive a copy of the recording after the event. So before we dive into using Gantt charts, let's start with the basics. Before you start, think about how most of us tackle a new work project. First, you've got to do a bit of homework. So what are the requirements and needs, and who needs to be involved? You've got to take this as the first step of the planning process. Then you need to think about the timeline and come up with an estimate of how long the project is going to take and what a realistic completion date would look like. Now, before we begin, I want to go ahead and take a quick audience poll. Okay, so you should see it pop up on your screen. And what are you currently using to track your projects? And you'll see a few options here, so just take a minute and click on one of the ones that is relevant to you, and we'll just give it a few seconds here to give you guys time to submit your answers. Okay, just a couple more seconds, so get those answers in. Okay, so let's take a look at the results. Wow, so it looks like a whopping 75% of you are using Excel or Google Sheets or spreadsheets. A few of you are old school, notebooks and Post-its, and about 13% of you are using Gantt chart software. You guys, and there are about 7 people who, just like to wing it. I admire your risk-taking there. So again, thanks for submitting your answers. So it looks like a few of you have been using basic tools to keep track of your projects, but could probably benefit from using Gantt charts. Okay, now, what makes a project successful? So the 3 things you want to think about before getting started with a new project are having a solid plan in place, establishing clear expectations with your team and stakeholders, and being able to adapt quickly to changes. So the key to helping your project be a success is by using a Gantt chart to plan and execute. And for those of you who don't know what a Gantt chart is or just need a reminder, the Gantt chart was developed by American mechanical engineer and management consultant Henry Gantt as a way to visually see a project's schedule. And since 1910, these bar charts have been an integral part of managing projects. And the Gantt chart is intended to be a visual representation of the project's schedule. So it gives you and your team a quick way to see how things are interrelated, how they are sequenced, what your dependencies are, any proposed dates, and ultimately progress. So your next question is probably, do I need a Gantt chart for my work project? And I would say that any project could benefit definitely from a Gantt chart. And again, Gantt charts give you a bird's eye view of the entire project. You can look at it and see the flow of your project, when things are scheduled to be done, how tasks and deliverables relate to one another, who is responsible for each part of the process at any given time, and all important timelines. So take a minute and think about the work that you want your Gantt chart to represent. If you want to track the timeline of your project or ongoing engagements with clients, for example, then you would likely benefit from using a Gantt chart to track it. And some people think of Gantt charts as falling under the domain of project managers, but in fact, anyone can use a Gantt chart to make sure that their team's work is executed well and gets completed in time. So here are 5 benefits of Gantt charts and how they can help your projects stay on track. So first off, one of the main benefits of Gantt charts is that they allow you to see the entire roadmap at once. As the saying goes, the best laid plans often go astray if you don't have a clear roadmap to success. And outside of this visual aid, you have to look for various places for information. So into contracts to see when a vendor is supposed to deliver something, or when a subcontractor or a freelancer is due to start. You have to scan and search through all your emails for new due dates, important docs, or any resource issues. And you may also need to have lots of meetings to keep the different teams and all the stakeholders in the loop. So with the Gantt chart, you can stay organized, and tools like Redbooth can help you keep all your requirements in one place. Let's say you're beginning a new project, which is to design a web page. To get started, you want to capture all the requirements, all of the work tasks, who owns those tasks, and the projected time that the tasks will take. And once you have that, you can start building your Gantt chart. With the chart, you can see everything in a way that's not really possible in any other format. So this timeline view helps you get a true sense of what's going on with your project. And a lot of the stress around projects involves the planning process, but with Gantt charts, you can take away the guessing and the uncertainty. They help you develop a good plan with action steps and with work tasks tied to specific dates and owners to check progress. Another huge benefit of using a Gantt chart for your projects is that any blockers or issues are going to jump right out at you, and you can get on top of them before they become a problem. So you can see instantly when some tasks are overdue and your team is falling behind. So this bottleneck might be something that can derail your entire project if it's not addressed quickly. So in this case, the initial logo designs for the web page seem to have stalled. Maybe it's because Michael, your designer, is swamped with a bunch of other work. So you decide to allocate a few more resources, maybe call in another freelancer or take some work off his plate so that he can finish this up. And now those tasks can be completed and you can get started on the next phase of your website. Another way Gantt charts help you manage your projects is by redefining your processes. So by using Gantt charts for planning and execution, you just get better and better at estimating your project's scope, timeline, and the resources it's going to take, and ultimately costs. So over time, you'll develop best practices for your business so that you can work efficiently. And task dependencies allow you to understand how tasks relate to one another. So you can see what work needs to be completed before other parts can begin. And with this understanding, you'll be better able to effectively manage your resources. So here, in this case, you won't be able to install your CMS or your content management system until your repository for the project has been created. And the Gantt chart shows that that task is overdue. So here you'll probably want to contact the task owner to see what the holdup is and maybe allocate additional resources if they need help. Even a simple project will have interfaces with other people, departments, or processes. So are there any approvals or forms, inputs, meetings, or reviews in addition to the start and end of a project? Something as silly as a meeting that can take more than a week to schedule if participants are unavailable. A Gantt chart helps to define them ahead of time and sequence the work accordingly. And we all tend to underestimate task duration for projects. So as you near the end of a project, teams are often very busy and frequently the closeout is skipped. So having the initial schedule at the end really helps to learn how to better plan in the future. So by tracking timeframes within that Gantt chart, you'll be able to improve your estimations and better plan in the future. For example, let's say you know that the design process for a website takes a large chunk of time overall, and there's a lot of back and forths, getting drafts approved and tweaks to the design. So in this example, your average design process for the website takes around 6 weeks, and you can account for that in the Gantt chart. And if you know a certain task, like let's say taking the visual inventory, takes 3 days and requires one of your workers, you can extrapolate the hours and the labor costs for that particular task. Gantt charts help you focus more on your work so that there is less chaos. And sometimes, we've all been there, projects can get out of control and feel like barely controlled pandemonium. So centralizing project information in a Gantt chart helps align your different teams, allowing them to easily share information and stay up to date with project changes. And everyone's working from the same playbook and understands the goal. So this makes it easier for everyone to stay in sync and work more efficiently. And because task assignment and progress information is displayed publicly, it helps individuals stay on top of their own work while allowing team members to hold each other accountable. So there's no time wasted with people not knowing what the next step is or lines of communication being crossed. And one final thing to remember to get the most out of your Gantt charts. Life happens, deadlines change, so it's important to be flexible and roll with the punches. So your Gantt chart is best used as structure from which you can deviate smartly when necessary, as you're bound to become smarter and more adept along the journey. It's an unrealistic expectation to think that the Gantt chart is set in stone. To be accurate, the chart needs to be updated regularly to reflect actual progress. So yes, Gantt charts can help you adapt quickly. So when using them, you want to make sure that they have the following features to make your life easier. Can you update due dates easily if your plans shift? Can you drag and drop things to make changes and move things around and change owners? So make sure that whatever system you're using, it's easy for you and your team to keep things up to date and update things regularly. Additionally, remember to keep it simple. You want to avoid an overly complex Gantt chart. So don't make it too complicated or rigid, as people need to understand it and remain flexible for surprises along the way. Break larger projects into smaller pieces to track with your Gantt chart. So finally, I want to walk you quickly through how easy it is to create a Gantt chart in Redbooth. So as a first step, this is your workspace. You want to get all your work tasks into Redbooth. And again, you can do that easily by either copying and pasting a bullet point list into Redbooth or importing them from a spreadsheet. Next, you want to assign an owner to the task from your team. So in this case, Sarah's responsible for all of the content. So you're going to go ahead and assign it to her. Next, you want to set a timeline for how long this task should take. So let's say this task should take about a week and a half. So I'm going to set the start and the end date. Now to see this all in a Gantt chart, all you need to do is click on Timeline View at the top right. And as you can see, your Gantt chart is created instantly for you. And now you have a visual representation of your project and can share this with key stakeholders who want to see progress in a Gantt chart. And for more details, we've got a short tutorial and articles on how to plan and manage your projects using Gantt or this timeline view in our Help Center. So I'm going to include a link to that at the end of the webinar. Okay, let's recap what we've discussed today and how Gantt charts can help you plan and execute projects better and make sure they're finished in time and on budget. So again, first, you get to see the entire roadmap. You can catch any bottlenecks and blockers early. You'll be able to refine your processes over time. And with that, you'll have more focused work and less chaos. And finally, you'll reduce errors and communications. Okay, great. So that's, I've gone through the main portion of the webinar today, and I want to open it up to Q&A. So again, you can enter your questions in the Q&A panel in GoToWebinar, and we'll go ahead and my colleague Diana will moderate those coming in.
Great, so Kim, here's our first question. Can you tell me more about dependencies?
Sure. So we hear from our users that dependencies are very useful for showing how tasks are connected. And with dependencies, you're linking tasks together because one task relies on other tasks to be completed before it can begin. So in Redbooth, you can drag and drop within Timeline View to connect tasks and create dependencies. And that way, everyone on your team can understand how one task will impact another one.
We have lots of questions coming in. Here's the next one. We have lots of different tasks and projects at my company. What's the best way that I can use Gantt charts?
Okay, that's a great question. Well, you can use them for a wide variety of projects. So they're especially useful for projects where you have multiple people or teams involved over a period of time. That said, you can certainly use them for projects that you're working on by yourself if you like the visual planning aspect. There's no limit to the number of Gantt charts that you can create in Redbooth.
We've got a question here. Kim, if you don't mind, I'm going to take this one.
Yeah, sure, go ahead.
So we have a question. How do you encourage team buy-in with Gantt charts, or really any project management tool? Most non-project managers seem reluctant to try new tools, even if they'll be helpful in the long run. That's a great question. And what we see here is that saying, hey guys, we've got a new tool, everyone has to use it, this is the way it's going to be, that approach is not always the most successful. Where we've seen a lot of success is to start small, start with your own engagement, get a few people who are excited about trying something new, bring your project to life. In this case, build out your task list, create a Gantt chart, and then as you start showing it to people and sharing it with them, what we hear frequently from our customers is that more people want to get on board. So we say start small, show the value, and then people often want to be a part of it. So let's see, we have a question that actually relates to that from another user. I understand how to use Gantt charts to plan and track work within my team, but how would they help us in interacting with other teams?
Okay, great. Another good question. So the great thing about Gantt charts is that they help you communicate about the work your team is doing with a visual image. In the past, many teams relied on complicated presentations or spreadsheets to try to loop in those other teams or your management. And now we're hearing that Redbooth users can just use the chart to communicate about what they're accomplishing in an efficient manner.
Great. And let's see, we have another great question. One that we're sure to have an opinion on. Why would I use Redbooth and not Microsoft Project? Great question. And of course, we're broadcasting from Redbooth's office, so so we've got our opinions, and we would encourage you to do your own research. What we hear from people who enjoy using Redbooth is that it's truly project management for everyone. It's very easy to use. It's very easy as a new user to get value out of it quickly. It's intuitive, and it's designed to be pleasant and accessible. We have a lot of respect for Microsoft Project. We think it's incredibly powerful, and for some professional project managers, that may be the right choice for their organization. So we're big fans of Redbooth, and we would just encourage anyone who's curious about it to get started for free, take it for a spin, and see how it works with their team.
Yeah, building on that, Diana, I think ultimately, Redbooth is a tool for the rest of us. Some project management tools out there are pretty complicated to use, and you need a dedicated, individual just to manage that system. And oftentimes when something is too complicated, that's when you have difficulties getting your team on board, and people might use it for, a week, a month or so, and then, people drop off. So I think, again, Redbooth is meant to be easy to use. It's easy to get people on board. Again, with this webinar, we're showing it's easy to get your Gantt charts set up. Don't take our word for it. Give it a test spin and see what you think.
So, Kim, we're not going to be able to get to all of the questions today. If you don't hear your question answered, we will reach out to you and address them. We have some great technical questions that are very specific that we'd love to reach out to you about. We do have one more question to cover in the webinar. So, do we need to change our internal processes to get value out of a tool like this?
Well, the short answer is no. So our Gantt charts can be extremely flexible. And in Redbooth, that's definitely the case. You don't have to change your processes at all. In fact, using a Gantt chart can help you follow your own processes better. So for example, if you've always intended to do a postmortem or a retrospective at the end of a project, seeing it on your visual project plan can increase the likelihood of making sure that it happens. So we want to make it easier for you to get your work done and meet your goals, and Gantt charts are a part of that. Great, so thanks everyone for those questions, and as Diana mentioned, we will respond to other questions that we didn't get a chance to address live after the event. And finally, if you want some more details on Gantt, or you have specific questions, I would urge you to check out the Help Center and check out how to plan and manage your projects. A short 2-minute tutorial, how to import your projects, and that should answer a lot of your questions. And additionally, in the Help Center, we have a whole section dedicated to Timeline View or Gantt. And again, that should be able to answer the majority of your questions. So, thanks for joining us today. And thanks again for taking the time to participate in this webinar. I hope it's inspired you to use Gantt charts to help manage all your projects like a pro. So thanks everyone for joining us, and have a great day.